Our invocation this evening will be offered by Lupe Moy, who is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Lupe, I just saw you. There you are. Come, if you would come forward. If you would please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we are grateful for all that we have. We have been truly blessed, and we ask Thee that we will be mindful and use wisdom with our resources. We ask Thee to bless our mayor, our city officials, and all those sitting in council, and everyone here, that we will be able to listen and learn and do it for the good of all. We ask Thee to bless those that are innocent, our children, bless our elderly, bless those that are sick and afflicted, and please bless us all during this pandemic, because we all are suffering. We ask Thee that we will be unified, even though we have conflicting interests and issues, that we will do it for the good of all. These favors and blessings we ask Thee for, in the name of Thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmembers Huff.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
DeLucy.
Here.
Steinmeier.
Here.
Hobart.
Here.
Mayor Weir.
Here. We have several citizens who requested to speak to the council this evening. The first is Richard McKee, who requests to speak to the council regarding bill number 22004. Mr. McKee.
Good evening. My name is Richard McKee. Good evening, City Council and our mayor and citizens of Independence. As a 41-year resident and citizen of this city, I am concerned about our city taking over the former Kmart property. Is this the right thing to do? If you can use eminent domain to take this property, who is next? Residential? Does our city have the expertise to run retail stores in this depressed economic climate? Does this property owe back taxes? Have they done something to hurt their neighbors? If you could not pass this with an emergency ordinance, is it right to pass it with one less vote? Our Missouri Bill of Rights, Article 1, Section 10 says, due process of law, that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. The National League of Cities opposes any restrictions on taking of private land. Does this line up correctly with our Missouri Bill of Rights? Tell me how this property is blight. Who benefits from this takeover of others' property? I believe most citizens would consider it unethical to take others' property. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Colleen Huff, who requests to speak to the council regarding a conflict of interest on bill number 22004. Ms. Huff.
Good evening, Council. My name's Colleen Huff, and I'm running for mayor of Independence. And I appreciate Mr. McKee's statement, because that leads right into what I have to present, because he asked a question: who is going to benefit from eminent domain? And it just so happens that someone who is sitting before me did receive a large donation from Sunflower Development Company, who is the development company that is wanting to take over this property. There was a post on December 14th by one of the council members saying that they were pleased to announce that Sunflower Development was going to engage in helping us get rid of the blight in our city, and that the council was going to vote on ensuing eminent domain of this property and condemning it. Well, I agree with Mr. McKee. I don't think the property is worthy of condemnation or condemning it, and also it is not right to take someone's property. And after that post on December 14th, someone who is sitting before me that has an active campaign received a $5,000 donation from Sunflower Development. And I am demanding that that person and any other council member that have received donations that have an active campaign going on, that they recuse themselves from this vote. I'm just so furious, and I'm just letting you know that what I see going on, the corruption, it's just multiple things, does not have the city's best interest in mind. And I am speaking on behalf of the city, and I'm just letting everyone know that if I am elected mayor, there will be no pay for play, and if any council member engages in pay for play, that it will be addressed appropriately. I'm just checking to see if I have anything. So basically, I am running for mayor to clean up our city internally and externally. And if I'm elected mayor, the corruption will stop, and that anyone engaging.
Mayor, I'm
Yes.
going to interrupt. We're not allowed to use city resources for any campaigns.
Okay,
So
then
if you
let
wanna-
me rephrase that. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Independence.
If you want to speak for yourself and anyone, other people that you know, that's fine, but this can't be used as a campaign platform.
Well, and I did not intend to do so, just to point out that there are members in the council who have received large donations from Sunflower Development, and they need to recuse themselves. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Holmes Osborne, who wishes to address the council regarding crime.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to chat about a fellow I met yesterday who lives on 24 Highway. He's a longtime resident. He lives next door to the military installation in a little bungalow probably built in the 1920s. His house was sprayed approximately 40 times by a high-powered rifle. He said it's an AK-47. I assume he's picked up shell casings. I don't know. I took some very simplistic pictures with my cell phone. You can see 2 bullet holes in his car. You can see 1 bullet hole large enough to where you can put your finger inside of it so it wouldn't be from a hand pistol. I'm going to leave this here. You can see this 2 more bullet holes, and I admit it's grainy and it's black and white, but here's a bullet hole here. Here's a bullet hole here. What I failed to take a picture of was the bullet holes in the siding of his house, his aluminum siding. It's sprayed vertically, probably 15 times. This fellow's in his 80s. I knocked on his front door. He thought I was a detective. Last time he saw a detective was back in November. He left the glass upon the front porch of his house, I suppose to reiterate what had happened. It looks like a fresh crime scene. Of course, it happened several months ago. And I just wanted to comment what a shame it is that we have a dearth of good law enforcement people. We have a dearth of good dispatchers. We have a dearth of the machinery that it takes to enforce law and order in this city that we have. It's a very large problem. It's what people are talking about more than ever. And of course, this is an almost worst case scenario. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, which is a miracle. I've never seen anything like this in real life. This is the type of stuff I've seen in movies and television shows, but I've never really, this was quite shocking to me. I just think we all know that something needs to be done about crime, and it needs to be done right now. I'm going to leave these photos here. If you have an interest, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rebecca Miles, who wishes to speak to the council regarding Rockwood Golf Course redevelopment. Ms. Miles.
Thank you for having me here. I made a presentation of my project, A Community of Cottages, to the Independent City Council in November 2018, and it has sustained great interest and evolved through the past 3.5 years. I met with the city manager in 2021, January, and he suggested that the Rockwood Golf Course property be considered for the development of my project. Subsequently, in April 2021, I located a prospective developer, Troy Nash. I made an introduction of Mr. Nash to a city council member and the city manager. We worked with Troy Nash for 4.5 months. The only negotiation I was aware of was Troy Nash pressing the city manager's office and the top elected city official for a commitment to provide the golf courses free land and for the city to provide the infrastructure for the development. The city council member was aware of this as well. Meetings were held and correspondence exchanged among all parties. Ultimately, as things ended up, I believe Troy Nash exploited my hard-earned respect and connections with the City of Independence officials in pursuit of his own personal agenda. After many meetings with Troy Nash, I decided to do my due diligence, as Mr. Nash originally presented himself as being with Newmark Zimmer, one of the largest development firms in the area. However, all correspondence was from the Nash Development Group. In mid-May 2021, I researched the Nash Development Group. I could find no website, no listing anywhere for the Nash Development Group, no phone number, address, or list of development projects. I emailed Troy Nash for clarification. His verbal explanation was of little value. He essentially blew off my request for clarification. In your packet, see the email of May 17th. In August, Rock Creek neighborhood residents were brought into the discussion about the Rockwood Golf Course redevelopment. I planned and organized a community meeting for the Rockwood residents. A city council member presided over that meeting. Minutes of the meeting were submitted to the councilman and city officials. The 3 main takeaways from community members were: 1, no low-income housing development; 2, no rental houses; and 3, no apartments. On August 15th, Troy Nash informed me that with regards to my project, that a developer cannot be profitable with that type of development, and said he would be proceeding with his plan for the development of single-family rental homes with the possible purchase after 15 years for the Rockwood site, using Missouri Housing Trust 9% low-income housing trust fund. The single-family rental homes would be for very low-income and low-income families, only purchasable after 15 years of rental, which ignores the community's feedback as well as the Independence New Housing Study. Troy Nash met with a council member to pitch the rental home proposal and called the top elected city official with his new plan. However, I told Mr. Nash I would not be interested in the rental home project at Rockwood. After my departure from involvement with Troy Nash and my being aware of his intent to pursue the development of rental homes at Rockwood, on December 7th, 2021, I sent an email to all city council members advising them of the step-by-step happenings with Troy Nash in order for them to be informed and to protect the residents of District 4. 2 council members stepped up and presented a resolution to cease development efforts on Rockwood. At the request of the city manager's office, a RFQ was issued for Rockwood Golf Course redevelopment, which opened November 9th and closed December 9th. Troy Nash responded to that RFQ as a partner of a company called Vanico. I am surprised to read stories in the media and posts on Nextdoor app that say there was no response to the RFQ. That is not true. Information and his submission is in your packet.
You have 1 minute.
I would caution the idea that has been verbalized that any development at Rockwood would require public subsidy and tax credits, as I believe Troy Nash has been very instrumental in the development of that mindset with city officials, again, in order to achieve his own goal. Affordable housing development does not mean low income, but low income tax credits do. See your packet, August 16th. In closing, I have had a heartfelt passion for this project for 4+ years. I have acquired many allies and advocates locally and regionally who are shocked at this turn of events. Originally, the city saw this vision of the project and they wanted it for Independence. However, Troy Nash, who first said this project is iconic, it must be done, came in, took over,
dashed all hopes for this project and turned what was a legitimate and bona fide exploration of something great for Rockwood and affordable home ownership for residents and independents into a political debacle and spectacle of media smears. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ken Love, who wishes to speak to the council regarding eminent domain. Mr. Love, you will have 3 minutes as you have previously spoken on this topic. Is that correct, Madam City Clerk? Correct. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I continue to speak on eminent domain as I did a few weeks ago when I spoke about a whistleblower. A whistleblower when I talked about the story of eminent domain. I also spoke about a man's named Troy Nash. Seems like another person stood up here tonight and talked about Troy Nash being involved in different things. Eminent domain is not what y'all need to be focused on. Due to the fact the last council meeting, I spoke of a property that I want to take as eminent domain. And someone tried to stop me from speaking because I wanted to take a property for eminent domain. Now, if it's fair for the City of Independence to take the Kmart building without going through the proper protocol and following the law, what is wrong with me taking somebody's property? There's no difference. I see a property that could be a great investment for low-income housing. Y'all see a property that y'all feel is a great investment for the city to get rid of blight. What's the difference? Low-income housing or blight? But remember, the whistleblower told me that is what the plans are for
You have 1 minute.
of the I-70 old Kmart building. Not only will it be destroying the Kmart building, but there's 2 other businesses there in that parking lot. How many jobs will y'all be destroying when y'all take that property? Where will those people go to work at? Thank you. Have a good evening.
Our next speaker is Laura Dominic, who wishes to speak about COVID-19 mitigation. Ms. Dominic.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Laura Dominic, 3525 Blue Ridge Boulevard in Independence. Here we are at the second council meeting of 2022, and the positivity rate for the city's COVID-19 dashboard has doubled in the last month, from 20.63% when I spoke at the December 20th meeting to 42%. What has the city done to mitigate the number of COVID-19 cases? Nothing. Not even a simple, cheap, effective mask mandate. Nothing. Reasons that I've heard why nothing has been done. Masks don't work. Yes, they do. Period. Full stop. There's a litany of professional information available to support that statement, so I won't belabor the point except to say that if you would like to read any of the professional literature supporting the efficacy of masks, I'm sure anyone in the health department would be more than happy to provide you with the links to that information. Or if you prefer to hear it from a local doctor, call any one of them at Centerpoint or Children's Mercy East, and they will tell you that masks work. Another reason I heard is I don't think we can tell people what to do. Of course you can. That's what you do every day. You tell people they have to wear their shoes in a restaurant. You tell businesses like mine that we have to have an insurance policy for reasons I still don't understand. And you are now telling businesses that they have to have a stolen shopping cart policy on file with the city. But heaven forbid you would have a mask mandate in place to protect your citizens from being infected with the deadly virus. Oh, but Attorney General Eric Schmidt might sue the city. Well, if he does, then fight back like every other jurisdiction is doing. Go to bat for us. Go to bat for the citizens you serve. The city council will just vote down any public health advisory we put in place. That is your prerogative. But as I discussed with the city manager, the health department and the advisory board of health should be screaming from the rooftops about the need for, at a bare minimum, a mask mandate. Like I said this summer, and none of you corrected me, not one of you is trained in healthcare or in public health. So if you vote down a public health advisory from your public health department, you're voting based on politics, not public health. There's no room for politics. We were in the middle of the largest pandemic in 100 years with a positivity rate that has doubled in 1 month and is now at 42%. But you know what burns me the most? The effect that your lack of action has had on healthcare providers. They have been made to grovel and beg to get anyone in a position to do so to put in even the most simplistic mitigation tool, mandating masks. Why would you disrespect the very people you will want to have be there, happy and healthy, if you or a loved one gets sick or injured? Why aren't you doing everything you can do to lift their burden instead of exacerbating it? Why aren't you proactively doing something without any prompting from me, the health department, the advisory board of health, and the CMOs of every hospital in the metro area? And finally, why do I have to ask again why we are spending $750,000 on a health department when you won't even listen to them? If you won't let them do their jobs, quit wasting the taxpayers' money pretending that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lowell Croft, who wishes to speak on Bill 22710. Mr. Croft.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Lowell Croft. I reside at 4319 South Brentwood Street here in Independence. Have been here for 45 plus years. Speaking tonight regarding the bill that's on the agenda, 22-710, which talks about doing something with the solar farm at Rockwood, the old Rockwood Golf Course location. And while I think it was a wrong location to begin with, there was a lot of money that's already been spent by the city to establish that as a solar farm now. We have a contract with MC Power that is ridiculous in my opinion, because it's a huge burden on the ratepayers here in Independence. It does not provide any benefit whatsoever to the ratepayers or the citizens of Independence. So we've already spent a bunch of money. This proposal talks about, taking those solar panels down and relocating them to another location. And I can't imagine what that would cost, but it would not be cheap. We also have the matter of the contract with MC Power, which I've not read, so I can't speak to what the terms are on that as to whether we can even get out of the contract, and if so, what it would cost us, to exit the contract. So there'd be more costs there, I'm sure. Finding another place to put the solar panels, I don't think, if any of you have been there and looked at that sea of glossy blackness that the people that live along the border of that property have to stare at out their back windows, I just think I think it's atrocious, and I think the people were, it was an unjust situation where they weren't given proper representation to come and speak before the council before that decision was made. The other thing that bothers me about that whole deal is that the city rushed into the purchase of that property, and instead of buying it when it was originally offered to them, they waited till a gentleman by the name of Carpenter that should be well known around the city for some of the dealings that he's had. He rushed in, bought the property, and then, probably within a month or so, just very shortly after he bought it, turned around and sold it to the city. And the city rushed and bought it because, it's a big urgent deal. We got to buy it. And he made a $500,000 profit. And that's just in a month. And that's just wrong. I still to this day think that whole scenario was orchestrated by some other people involved in the background in politics around here. And I think some of the council members at that time were involved as well. So it was rushed into. I think it is, a terrible place to put the solar farm, to have it. But I think the cost of trying to relocate it now would just be astronomical and just an additional burden on the citizens, ratepayers of this community. So I sure hope that before any action is taken to even consider doing such a thing, there needs to be a lot more investigation into what the cost would actually be and where you're going to put it. And I mean, there's just so many open-ended questions. But one of the big factors is, the deal with, with MC Power, in that contract. The other thing, the solar farms continue to lose money to the tune of approximately $850,000 per year. Is what it's costing the ratepayers to have those solar farms in operation. That's considering the money that's paid on an annual basis to MC Power, which is about $1.5 million. We do get the power from those solar panels fed back into the grid, and so that offsets some of the purchase, or some of the power that would have to be purchased, in place of that. But the bottom line is that on average, it has cost the ratepayers $850,000 a year.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So taking that in consideration, I mean, I think it was a bad thing to begin with. We're already committed to this contract now. I have no idea, because I haven't read the contract, as to how or when we might even be able to get out of it and what it would cost to get out of it. You'd have to balance that again against keeping it going and continuing to pay the losses. So with that, I just hope that the council won't approve this particular bill this evening, because I think there's just way too much in the way of unanswered questions. Thank you much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sherry Tyndall, who wishes to speak to the council regarding utilities resolution being brought to PUAB before the city council. Ms. Tyndall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I'm Sherry Tyndall, 3708 South Grand Avenue. I'm a member of the Public Utilities Advisory Board, and it is our job, basically, to advise the council on matters that have an impact on all three utilities, and especially things that don't need to be dealt with within a month, so that we could do some contemplating, debating, even researching, and then bringing advice to the council. So my suggestion would be to send the related resolution tonight or any other night to PUAB first, and have us tackle some of the citizen impact ideas and bring it back to you all with advice. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That concludes our speakers who signed up to address the council tonight. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council? Okay, this brings us to our consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the reports and recommendations of the city manager.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items any council member wishes pulled for separate consideration?
Madam Mayor, 1 and 7.
Are there any others? Okay, Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll on the consent agenda, minus item number 1 and item number 7?
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Item number 1.
Yeah, I'll just combine both of them. I don't have any problem with the money. My only question is we have a Ford dealership right here in Independence. Just wondering why, if they were notified of this or they just weren't interested. Just, I like to keep the money within the city. It's the only question I have about it.
Yes, thanks for the question, Council Member. This was made through the Regional Cooperative Purchasing Agreement, where the dealerships are notified. Sometimes it's cost advantageous for them to bid, other times it's not. The good news is that in speaking with these dealerships, oftentimes they do find work with other municipalities based on what the specific nature of that order is. So in this instance, it was more cost effective for this dealership. The city gets the benefit of having a lower purchase price than if we went directly as a citizen would to the dealership. But we have been able to check and find that they do find participation in that regional cooperative purchasing agreement beneficial. They still get work from other jurisdictions and sometimes independents.
If I could, I'd like to move to approve 1 and 7.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Mr. City Manager, while we are on this topic of police equipment, could you just, for the benefit of the council and the public, maybe describe to us what is this replacement program? Because we know that we are down a number of officers, so people may be wondering why we need more vehicles when we are still, trying to hire more officers. So can you just give us a little detail on that?
Yeah, a couple quick key points for the community. One is that officers use their vehicles a lot different than the everyday citizen would. So, of course, they're driving and accelerating at high rates of speed. Their vehicle is also like a mobile office. There's the mobile data terminals in there, so they have to keep their vehicle running and idling when they're out of their car to keep the system up and running. That idling does cause stress on the engine over time. So cars turn over faster than what we as citizens experience with our private vehicles.
So are we taking 11 vehicles out of service as we put these 11 back in? And I know they don't arrive tomorrow. We don't go over to and pick them up. They need to be ordered, equipped. But so does that, what happens to those vehicles that these are replacing?
Right, and that's perfect. That leads into the second item, which is there's about a 10 to 12 month lead time right now on these vehicles. So if you drive up and down the Miracle Mile right now or any other dealership, you'll notice it's a little sparse out there. That's because the lead time to get these vehicles produced is falling into the greater supply chain issue that every manufacturer is experiencing. So we're anticipating a 10 to 12 month lead time to getting these vehicles on site from when this order is made. We do keep track of things like engine run time, mileage on the vehicle, and cycle those out when it becomes more cost effective to do that than to continue to maintain the vehicle. And then finally, thanks to the support of the council and the community, we've employed 3 different strategies to both retain and recruit new officers into the community. As that's being deployed, we're really optimistic that that's going to eat into our vacancy rate. The good news is we'll have those positions filled, but that does mean they need the equipment to sustain their efforts. And part of what was employed and approved by the voters last fall is those increased use tax funds going to support purchase of equipment. So that helps with this. So those are kind of the 3 issues of why we need to do this now.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, we need to vote on these separately, is that correct? Yes. So, but there's been a motion and a second for approval of item number 1. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
Yes.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
Yes.
Mayor Weir?
Yes. And there's been a motion and a second for approval of item number 7.
So moved.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
Yes.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
Yes.
Mayor Weir?
Yes. Our first public hearing tonight is for the application by Joe Seta requesting a special use permit to operate a car dealership business at 9300 East US 40 Highway. This is new information only. Mr. Arroyo.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Rick Arroyo. I'm the Assistant Community Development Director here at the city. This special use permit was considered by Planning Commission on December 14th of 2021. Planning Commission did vote in approval of this special use permit. This would reestablish an expired used car lot at 9300 East 40 Highway, and I have no new information to add.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the council on the public hearing? Public hearing is closed. Madam City Clerk.
Bill number 22-002, an ordinance approving a special use permit to operate a used car lot at 9300 East US 40 Highway in Independence, Missouri. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill?
Madam City Mayor,
Yes.
I'm concerned with the number of used car lots between the two, on 40 Highway between Kansas City and I think it's Blue Ridge, something like that. There's like 7, 8, 9, I can't remember the number, it's a lot. And I noticed that the original staff recommendation saw it, rather suggested we not approve it. And I saw 2 of the agenda people did not like it, thought it was too many, and I do too. I think that's just too many car lots in that area, so I'll be voting no.
Mr. City Manager, I read the information provided in the packet. Either I didn't see it or it's not included. Do we keep track if there have been complaints for zoning violations, property code violations as we're considering these applications, or is that information available?
I'm going to ask Mr. Arroyo what degree that's weighed in their review.
We do keep track of whether or not there was any violations for this area. In this particular case, the area had been vacant for, I don't remember how many years, but there wasn't any as far as this applicant and this property owner.
Okay, and this property owner purchased the property when?
I'd have to check here. Give me 1 second. I believe it was in the last year.
Yeah, okay, okay.
This year.
That's fine. I mean, that's adequate. That's been the last year. I asked that because I live in the neighborhood and I have had several neighbors complain about the condition of the property, but that may have been prior to this owner. So thank you for answering that question. Is there any other discussion on this bill?
Mayor,
Yes.
not specifically to this, but overall, this has been a source of conversation through the years of how many is allowable, free market, should that make the decision? I believe there was some information that was given to the Planning Commission that kind of broke down per capita compared to some of the other municipalities of what our used car sales look like or car sales lots look like comparatively. Can you get that information and disperse that to the council so we can review that?
We will do that.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. City Manager, could you just describe that? Well, I take that back. I have one question first. How long has it been since that was an active car lot? Do we know that?
I'll defer to the Assistant Planning Director.
I would have to look that up. I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's been, I think it has been within the last year, within months when it expired.
Sometime in the last year or two, something
Yeah.
like that?
Yep.
Somewhat recently?
I think it's within the last, this year, or 2021.
In 2021?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you tell Councilmember DeLucci, has there been complaints on that property or no? Or did you know?
Not that I'm aware of, or at least for this property owner.
All right, thank you very much. And I do have a question for you, Mr. City Manager. How is it that the city came to recommend against this use?
In part, what Councilmember Perkins is referring to, data suggests that there is an oversaturation of that type of use in that area. Now, that's not quantifiable by, any mathematical definition, but just simply looking at the numbers of that type of use within that corridor seems to suggest that there's an oversaturation of that use there. Also, the city's comprehensive plan that was adopted 3 or 4 years ago, the updated comprehensive plan, speaks to the kind of types of use that we want to see in that corridor, and it seems that this use has been satisfied with the existing businesses.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
No.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
No.
Mayor Weir?
No. Ordinance passes. Our next public hearing is for the application by Todd and Kim Shearer requesting a rezoning from I-1 Industrial to C2 General Commercial for property located at 11445 East Truman Road. This is new information only. Mr. Arroyo.
Thank you again, Mayor and members of the council. This rezoning was considered on December 14th, 2021 as well. Planning Commission did recommend in favor of this rezoning. This is actually a downzoning from an I-1 to a C2 commercial for the purpose of a motorsports performance parts store. And that property has been vacant for like about 4 years, I believe. So I have no new information to add.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the council on the public hearing? Public hearing is closed. Madam City Clerk.
Bill number 22-003, an ordinance approving a rezoning from District I-1 Industrial to District C2 General Commercial for 11445 East Truman Road in Independence, Missouri. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
Yes.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
Yes.
Mayor Weir?
Yes. Ordinance passes. Non-ordinance action item number 1.
Bill number 21-836, a resolution lifting the state of emergency in Independence, Missouri.
Is there any discussion on this item?
Madam
Sure.
Mayor.
Yes.
We had this come up a couple council meetings ago, and there was much discussion about the emergency powers of the mayor, that the mayor can have a state of emergency, and once that state of emergency is declared, that the mayor is the one who can end it. I have two things that I want to talk about. In our emergency proclamation, it says at the bottom that the proclamation is effective until further notice shall be subject to the city council review for wording and compliance every 30 days. I can't even remember the last time we discussed this as a council. So I'd like to see us be more involved in that. If we want to revise the wording, if we feel like we have new mitigation efforts that need to be happening in the city, that we should have an input in that. There's only one sentence in the charter that talks about the mayor's emergency powers, and yet we have section 11.12.004, which describes the emergency powers of the mayor. There's two things in here that I think that most people may not be aware of, that I think we should talk about at some point as a council. It's number 6 and number 7, where it says to order the discontinuance of selling, distributing, dispensing, or giving away of any firearms or ammunition or other weapons at any charter or of any character whatsoever, or non-intoxicating or intoxicating liquor. That's the first one. And then number 7, to order the discontinuance of selling, distributing, or giving away gasoline or other liquid, flammable, or combustible products in any container other than a gasoline tank properly affixed to a motor vehicle. This would mean that we would have limited supply. If we had a power outage and you have a generator, you wouldn't be able to go out to a gas station if whoever the mayor is and declares that you can't get gas in an approved gas can. This to me is a little bit of an overreach. We should be able to provide for our families and care for ourselves if we are truly in a state of emergency as described here. I'm not sure that this is even constitutional when it comes to the firearms. We have a Second Amendment. We need to honor that. We're sworn oath to do that. And so I just am concerned that point 6 and point 7 need to be revisited at some point.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
No.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
No.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
No.
Mayor Weir?
No. Item fails. Action item number 2.
Bill number 22-707, a resolution directing the city manager to pursue an external forensic audit of the Staywell Fund.
Is there any discussion on this item?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to send that to the Staywell Committee for consideration.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Mayor, I will say I go to the Staywell Committee. They know exactly what they need to ask. They are very well-informed, and they're a committee, and we have certain committees to do work for us, and I'd like them to look at it first. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
wouldn't it be good to have an audit, a forensic audit to send as part of the Staywell Committee's review and make recommendations based on what they've seen? That's my question.
Who is your question directed to?
Whoever would like to answer it
Okay.
tonight.
Councilman Hobart has made the motion. Mr. City Manager, the Staywell Committee is advisory to the city manager, not to the council, so I'll defer to either one of you gentlemen if you'd like to respond.
I have no comment.
Okay.
Can I talk?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. The committee I've been attending for a couple of years. They know exactly what they are doing. They know exactly what is best for the citizens and what's exactly right for the employees and retirees. Whatever they think is best, I assumed would come back to us. And do they want an external forensic audit? I don't know. We'll find out. Do we finally get a management analyst? That would be nice. That would be nice. I just don't know. I think we're acting too quickly than what we need to do, that's all. And that's why I'm suggesting things go to the PUAB, things go to the Planning Commission, things go to the Personnel Board. I think it should go to the Staywell Committee.
I do want to point out a key difference. Those boards bring recommendations to the council. The Staywell Committee brings recommendations to the city manager, which is a key, I think, a very significant difference. I feel that given many changes that have happened in our Staywell Employee Health Care Fund, and that, you know, an audit is appropriate, and I would say that probably a regular audit is appropriate. I'm just trying to be clearly understand what it is. The intention of this resolution is, because if it is for the council to give direction, then I don't feel that the Staywell Committee is necessarily the appropriate body. They advise the city manager. We do have a council audit and finance committee. It might be appropriate to, and which I think is included in this resolution, to have the council audit and finance committee work with this, and then they would bring something back to the council. So I just want to make sure that we are all understanding of the Staywell Committee's role. Yes. Did you have something?
Yes. The reason why I brought this forward here is because I have had a lot of constituents call me, retirees, people that are employed here, and there's been a lot of changes in this healthcare for over 5 years. They've had 5 years to do this. I feel like that they come to me and ask me to see what I could do with it. They would like to see something. And so that's why I brought it forth for an external forensic audit, and it goes to the audit and finance people.
Okay.
Was there an amendment to the, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
No, there is a motion on the floor to defer this to the Staywell Committee.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm in favor of the motion to let the Staywell Committee bring it forth to the city manager and have their points of discussions that they need and their points of us looking at whatever the issue may be there. The term forensic audit semi-applies or does apply that there could be criminal activity there, and I feel confident there is no criminal activity here, but having an audit is always good. We can always review, but I think it needs to come through the committee first. So I'll be supporting the amendment.
Mr. City Manager, is that what forensic means?
We
I
contact.
want to make sure.
Yes.
I mean, I guess that's not my, and maybe Mr. Cover, you could weigh in. I just want to be clear if that's what that implies.
Yeah, that wasn't a term that I was familiar with, so we reached out to Chester Moyer, who is the certified public accountant with our third-party audit firm, Rubin and Brown. Mr. Moyer advised us that by accounting terms, forensic audit does not exist. Accountants typically do forensic accounting services, but as Councilmember Perkins mentioned, they're structured around litigation or other critical projects. These are typically the most costly option because it carries the weight and significance of legal testimony. There are a number of other audit options available that Mr. Moyer referenced, including a financial audit, a financial review, agreed upon procedures, performance audit, and examination engagements. So that's just a little quick background on various types of audits.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yep.
So, Mr. City Manager, based on that, what would be closest in all that you've been given to what we are calling a forensic audit?
I don't understand the scope or need for the audit. I have not been approached by either chair of the Stay-Well Committee to understand what the council's desire is.
I think what our desire is to make sure that the monies that are there have been appropriated properly. That, I think, transparency and making sure that we bring the peace of mind to those who depend on our decisions to go beyond what we would normally do to ensure that, given what's taken place, that we're doing everything we can to ensure that we've been up and up, we've had total transparency, and that we can stand behind what we're doing.
Certainly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for an outside audit.
Yeah, to be sure, we do that every year with the annual comprehensive financial review that's performed by our third-party auditor, of which the Stay-Well Fund is one of the city's funds that's audited, and no findings have been made by the third-party auditor in this 5-year window regarding the Stay-Well Fund.
I'm good.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
No.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
No.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
No.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Hang on a second. Was that a yes for, what are we voting on?
Your motion. Your motion to send it.
My motion to send it
to the Stay-Well Committee.
Okay, yes.
I'm going to vote no. I would like to suggest there seems to be maybe a need to clarify some of these items. So I would make a motion that we postpone this for 2 weeks and clear up some of the intention and the language in the proposed item. So I make a motion to postpone until, what would it be, the 30th? No, that's wrong.
The 7th? February 7th?
February 7th. Okay, that fails for lack of a second. So that brings us to Madam State Clerk.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
No.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Nope.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Item number, where are we? Item number
707.
2 passes, right? Okay.
Mr. City Manager, I have a question. I don't know the price of a forensic audit. I'm not sure what it means. I also don't know who pays for it. The Staywell people are very competent, but they don't have excessive money. So do we look at that before we do this, or do we just pay it and we're done?
Well, unless the vote changes, it's passed, but we don't know the cost of that. There's no fiscal note or fiscal review associated with that. We've
So
not
who pays
solicited
for it?
It's been my experience that the party being audited pays for it, which would be the Staywell Fund, which is the employees and retirees of the city.
That's historically what's happened with audits in this city. They're paid for by the fund that it affects,
Can I just want to be clear.
which could run into the six figures, by the way, easily.
In the item that it says, the direction is that the city council directs the city manager to pursue a forensic audit of the Staywell Fund. So that means go find out what this is going to entail, in my interpretation. But as the city manager has pointed out, this is passed, so we will move on to item number 3.
Bill number 22-708, a resolution directing the city manager and city clerk to revise the procedures for records requests pertaining to email retrieval and review.
Is there any discussion on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
so the two key words for this resolution are transparency and consistency. I requested this because when somebody sends in a sunshine request for emails, we need to be as transparent as possible and as consistent as possible. So this resolution basically lays out what would happen and that an email pull would be done by the tech services to make it happen. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. City Manager, can you explain what we do now? When I receive those, I do a quick review just for my look, but I always send it over to tech services, let them, in case I miss anything. What different does this do compared to what we already do?
If the council would indulge, I would defer to the clerk as the custodian of records. She manages that process and would be better suited, I think, to answer your question.
So currently, if we get a records request for someone's specific email, we'll say for myself, I would go in and I would search my emails because everyone under the City of Independence umbrella, we're all bound by the Missouri Sunshine Law. So in most instances, if it's a very large records request, we would go through tech services. For the most part, we do individuals and having them search their emails because that's the most cost-effective method to do the email search, which is also one of the stipulations under the Missouri Sunshine Law.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So as an IT professional myself, I just don't think that process is efficient because let's say the person being asked to do it would delete an email, that won't show up in the search. An email pull guarantees it'll pull it up because that recovers the deleted items in the archive.
So, Madam City Clerk or Mr. City Councilor, what is the law, policy, practice, whatever the terminology might be, regarding retaining public records? If there is an email and that email is deleted, is that appropriate? Or is that really deleted? Can it still be found? How is that handled?
So the retention piece of it is different than the records request piece of it. So the retention, they are held there until tech services deletes those emails from the server. So even if I were to delete an email out of my personal inbox, tech services still has that on a server that can be retrieved.
Okay. So typically when a sunshine request is received and it's sent to either the council, the staff, whomever is being requested of the information, the city clerk says, let me know how long this is going to take. If it's going to take longer than 15 minutes, then don't do anything and let me contact the individual or outlet or whomever who has requested this to see if they wish to pay the fee associated with however long the estimated time is. And in that case, they will either say yes or no, or amend their request. My concern on this is that that if we're going to insist that everything be handled by tech service, there's going to be a charge for that for every citizen who requests anything, which I think is restricting the public's access to the information. Now, if they make a request and it's not, the information they've requested is not found, they certainly can come back and request a more thorough, search the server. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'm going to support this because recently a wonderful news story came out a couple weeks ago regarding a resolution that never made the agenda, and a sunshine request was made on a resolution that never made the agenda. And when the reporter contacted me, they were upset that I didn't respond to the sunshine request, which I promptly said I did in fact respond to all the emails that I had were actually sent. And this reporter said, well, we didn't get those emails from 3 on the council. I said, let me guess which 3. So I just want some transparency and some accountability when there is a sunshine request made by citizens, media, that there's a way of tracking it and getting it out, because I don't feel like it's being handled appropriately, and it's embarrassing, and it made us look like we were being obtuse and not responding to the request, and that's wrong. And if this is the measure we have to take to make sure that accidents like these don't happen again, then I say we go above and beyond. We exercise that level of professionalism and caution to make sure that we're all covered, not just a few, all of us.
Madam, I'm sorry, just one moment. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, going along with that, if there's only a 15-minute deal for IT to look it up, it's not going to be very much money anyway. I mean, it's very minimal for the smaller ones. I had one that I did, it was over $100, but it was for like 5 years. So I'm supporting this also. I think we need the transparency. Say it's not getting out there. I know for a fact that my emails did not get to that news person either. So I'm for the transparency. I have nothing to hide, and I will be supporting this.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilman?
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, did Mr. Stewart consult with your office or with Mr. Cover and discuss how the procedures would work for this?
I believe I had some email traffic with Councilmember Stewart. I can't speak for Mr. Cover, but asked me how that process works, and can't recall, but I believe the city clerk was brought in on that too to just help clarify my understanding.
I'd like to address Mr. Cover then. Mr. Cover, is there a situation where somebody needs to review documents that are produced pursuant to a sunshine request to make sure that they qualify to be produced? In other words, does somebody need to review the content of the documents produced pursuant to a sunshine request?
That review happens as part of the records request. So it's, to the extent that, obviously it depends on what the request is, but whether that is happening from emails provided directly by the responsive individuals or through tech services, that review still takes place.
Okay, so maybe this is for Mr. City Manager or Ms. Behrens. let's say this passes and IT just handles all the sunshine requests, who's going to review all those pages for appropriateness to be produced? I need to know how this procedure is going to work.
We've not had that in-depth conversation yet.
Well, I hope everybody sees the problem.
Is there any further discussion on item number 3?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
so within this process, would, Madam City Clerk, as a request comes in, would we be notified if we were part of that request, or would that just go straight to tax services?
It would just go straight to tech services.
So then how would our office know that we had been requested a sunshine?
You wouldn't unless we updated the process.
Okay, so I'm kind of going along with Councilman Hobart. The process here just doesn't seem to be quite right. Not to say that this bill can't be supportive at a later time, but as it is, I cannot stand for it.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I understand that, well, one of the things that was voiced to me is that Independence has a reputation for not being quite the agreeable, helpful city for sunshine. And so I think that we need to look at, I'm not surprised if some are being treated one way and others another way on this council, why we wouldn't want that change to take place. But I think that we owe it to each other to make sure there's accountability and that those emails get into the citizens' hands, the media's hands. They'll pay whatever. But I think that operating in the shadows, even in sunshine requests, bothers me. We should be transparent. Nothing to hide. If I'm sending it out in my accounts, I have no problem with somebody reading it. I'm fully aware that if I write something in an email, that it could be sunshine. I have no problem with somebody asking to see it. So it's just odd to me that mine don't get out, but other council members do. And those are the ones that don't want to change it, so.
I don't understand that. I'm sorry, I'm just not following that a sunshine request was made, some of that, the media outlet, and I would be interested to know what media story you're talking about, so we're all on the same page, that the reporter was provided with some of the emails, but not all of the emails? Is that what,
I think I stated very clearly that mine did not make it in that sunshine request, and neither did 2 other council members.
Okay, I just want
And
to,
so-
I just wanted to
And
understand.
I'll be happy to show the story. It's right here.
Okay,
So,
can I see it?
you bet. Well, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but it's this one.
Okay, so, I guess what I'm confused about is that's an issue with not, people not complying with providing the information, it's that information getting delivered. But the city clerk does provide us quarterly with a report on all of the sunshine requests. Perhaps we could make that more frequent, and perhaps we could add to that report, you know, here were the people who were asked, these were the people who said, who provided things, here's the people who said that they were not, it was not provided. So I get where this is going, but I don't know that it's quite there yet without further discussion. I think a study session on this topic would help us to work out exactly how this would work. How this would work procedurally.
I believe, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
So, I mean, it clearly states right in the resolution that once the emails have been retrieved, they will be reviewed by the legal division of finance and administration prior to releasing the records. So I'm not sure what's real not clear about what happens after IT pulls them. And back to my original point, let's say I want to make a sunshine request to Councilmember Perkins' email, and I want to request anything that mentions the word blue in it, the color blue. He gets the request from the city clerk. He goes in his email and he doesn't find anything. Well, that's possibly because he's deleted it off his local account. So that sunshine request would not be fulfilled per the request. If IT goes in and does it, or tech services goes in and does it, they see all the deleted emails that he's deleted out of his account, and they are able to pull it from the archives. The person should not have to go back and make a second request to do a tech pull when they've already made the request. That's all I have.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
No.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
No.
Mayor Ware.
Well, it's already passed, so that's regardless of how I vote. I'm going to vote no because I just think it needs to be more. I understand where we're going, but I just think that it needs more work. But it does pass. That brings us to item number 4.
Bill number 22-709, a resolution allowing the release of pertinent information to the City Council for settlement of pending litigation.
Discussion?
Madam Mayor, I felt that the last council meeting we had with the settlement offer that was brought to us, we were being asked to make a decision on a settlement that was huge, with very little information to go on, very little we were just relying on 2 attorneys to give us advice, not sure what was going on. We moved it to an open session because we wanted transparency. We wanted to have an open discussion. I respect that. But it's very difficult for us to make decisions when we're talking about $300-400 million, whatever the value of that offer was, with very little to go on. And I think that's, for me, I felt very uncomfortable being asked to make a decision on behalf of the taxpayers of the city and their dollars with very little information or understanding. And I think that when we are brought cases, whether they're being in the settlement phase, whatever it is, that we should have access to facts regarding how we got to that place so we know what questions to ask so we can make a better informed decision. I mean, I just think that's our obligation to every citizen here. So I'm hoping that we'll understand that this gives us the ability with all cases that when counsel's asked, we have the option to request information regarding the case, all of it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
for the record, it took me about 2 seconds to decide not to accept that settlement. I had more than enough information.
I do.
Yes,
Madam
go
Mayor,
ahead.
I do have a question for the litigation person. If Mike has a question, can he not call and say, I want to meet with you and I want to talk to you, I want to understand all this? He's a member of the council. The city is being sued.
He can and does. There's a difference between questions and records related to pending litigation. So Yes, he can and does talk with me about questions related to pending litigation, but that's different than records related to pending litigation. You all, as a council, have closed records related to pending litigation pursuant with the Sunshine Law. It's my position that it takes, because the council has closed them via city code, it takes the council to open those up even to themselves. So what this resolution would do would make records essentially that are pertinent, which I suppose is somewhat open to interpretation, but pertinent records related to pending litigation available to you as the council. It doesn't make them open to the public. It makes them available to the council, which currently they are not they aren't automatically, because you all have closed them.
So, it would make information available to the council, but those records are still closed to the public.
Those records are still closed to the public. It doesn't change that. It would just be those records, to the extent you all opted to provide them to yourselves, would just be like any other information or record that's provided to you in executive session. It is still not available for public dissemination unless and until you all chose to make it public.
Okay, I have a question. I'm just looking at who requested this. I just have a question about, again, the wording on this. Is this related to a particular settlement offer, or is this related to any settlement offer? Because and I'm sorry, I mean, the way I read it, the first portion of it seems to be referencing a settlement offer for pending litigation. So I'm not clear if this is moving forward regarding any settlement, or is this just related to this particular case, which we discussed in the open session a couple weeks ago?
Is that for me?
Are
you asking me?
No, I
Okay.
guess I'm asking Councilman Steinmeier and Huff if this, I mean, I just want to make sure that I understand the intention.
And I'm happy to clarify. Initially, I asked specific to the current litigation, but then I was advised it'd be better to have it for councils today and councils for tomorrow. That if there's pending litigation, that they have the same ability to inquire without going to our city councilor. Jeremy and I have had many conversations, phone calls, and he just kept saying the same thing. You can't, but with council approval, you can. You can't, but with council approval, you can. So it got to a point where it finally sunk in, Jeremy, I mean, after so many talks, that in order for us to have access to information, I guess I'm not as astute a legal mind as I've been made out to be, but I know this. I feel like that's the right thing, whether it's small or massive. We still have the need to ask pertinent questions as to how we got to this place, who's involved, why are we here, what's happening. Those are questions I want to ask, and I don't want, you can't have access to that. I can't answer that. As a council, we can ask those questions, and we should be able to get it, and then we can make better informed decisions. So it's on all.
Okay.
If that helps.
The reason I ask is if this is related to a particular case, it changes my thinking of it if it relates to any, and it's just not clear how it's written here. And Mr. Cover, how do we assure when records are given to the council that they do not become public?
You don't.
I mean, there's
Sorry,
no,
that was Dan Hobart, not Mr. Cover.
there's no way to guarantee that. Once it's released beyond the city's control, I mean, whether it's intentional or unintentional, someone forwards an email or leaves a piece of paper laying around or anything like that, I mean, they cannot be guaranteed that it remains closed at that point.
Okay. Further discussion? Yes.
Yeah, I had a little issue, and this is what brought this forth also, Mr. Cover, is that Mr. Coronado communicated that he did not solicit a settlement here in the open meeting the other night. What if I can show you the opposite, that Mr. Coronado did request a draft and a settlement agreement?
I'm happy to speak to that issue, because I picked up that there was some confusion on that after the last meeting. I'm some of this is speculation, but I'm piecing it together as best I can. Mr. Campbell, the plaintiff in that litigation, had previously submitted to the city a draft resolution essentially in resolution form, that where you all would turn over the power plant and do the things that he was wanting to do. That is not typical that we would receive or take to you a resolution or an ordinance or anything like that someone else drafted. The response that I gave to Mr. Coronado, that from what I recall he relayed to Mr. Campbell's attorney, was that if he wanted to submit a settlement offer, to put that in writing and we would take it to the council. That's what Mr. Coronado did, and that's subsequently what we did. So it was in response to their resolution that they wanted to put forward in you all, which was unclear and inappropriate, that we said, if you want to put forward a settlement offer, put it in writing and we'll take it to the council, and that's exactly what we did.
I beg you differ there, but that's the idea here, is that we do not have the correct information to make a decision. That's what this resolution's about, and I do have the proof that it's the other way around, in writing, from the get-go.
Can I have that?
Huh?
Can I have that proof?
I'll make sure he gets it, and he can do whatever he wants.
I appreciate that. Because if we have outside counsel that we're paying money to that's acting without, on their own volition, then we all need to be apprised of that. I don't know why you're keeping it secret.
I'm not keeping it secret. I brought it forth.
I want to remind everybody that Mr. Campbell wanted to meet with me alone. And I said, no. If you want to meet with Karen, or if you want to make an offer, and that's what Coronado meant to do, send the offer, because it's not Karen. There's 7 of us up here, and there's 117,000 people we deal with as citizens. That's what that whole thing was. Put it in writing and let me see it. And the offer we saw was ludicrous. You don't need to know all the back. We're not giving them Blue Valley. I will never agree to that, and I can't imagine anyone up here agreeing to that. So why are we going to look at, if these attorneys will answer questions to you, why are we doing this? I don't see a reason. I'm not supporting this resolution.
Madam Mayor, just in response, I asked Mr. Coronado who solicited the settlement offer. That was the question. And then we got the response back saying that they brought it to us. Councilmember Huff, I don't understand what this is, but Councilmember Huff has something that apparently he's going to give to you stating otherwise. I mean, and listen, it's not about the amount. Everybody agrees it was ludicrous. It's how we got to that place. What was involved? That's where you have a right to ask those questions. And as your representatives that you've elected, we hear you ask those questions, and we can come back and we can ask them, and we're perfectly within our right to ask those. But then there's this legal answer or response from you that says we have to have council approval to do so. If they don't want to give us the approval to look at it, I know that I saw in a story today that Mr. Campbell's part of his deposition was released. I haven't seen it. I asked to. I haven't seen it. And that was apparently released in part, a redacted version, but it doesn't matter. If I want to read it, if I ask to read it, why can't I read it? If my constituents want to know what's going on, why can't I ask questions? This is a matter of trust. This is a matter of transparency. We are representatives of them, not legal opinions, them. If they have a question, I have an obligation to bring it. If we don't want to answer it, I'll go back and I'll say, no one wants to answer your question. Then they can hold everybody accountable at that point. It's a matter of people just feeling like they can trust their elected officials to do the right thing. That's it, bottom line. And that's all we're trying to do, is give this council the ability to ask questions, to get facts, and bring back answers to those we represent. I think it's pretty simple stuff. And if you think that we can make decisions in 20, 30 minutes, you throw a document at me, I look at it, and then everybody's collecting them real fast. If I don't have access to more information, I feel like we're not getting what we're asking for, and I think that people deserve better. That's just my opinion.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Cover,
Yes.
So the way I feel about this is I believe we have the right to see what we're asking for. Titan Fish learned something through their investigations, was it depositions or something else, that they believed that they could take a power plant from us, which is just insane. And I want to know what that is. And furthermore, there are two members sitting up here on this council that I believe should abstain from this vote because their records would be a part of it. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Well, I would encourage all the lawyers up here and everywhere else to take a look at the actual claims made in this case. And if you think that Joe Campbell has a smoking gun, Karen DeLucci sat in on the deposition. Now, I know everybody else in here knows better. I know everybody knows better that Joe Campbell has all this massive proof. It's very simple. In a defamation case, you're telling somebody you told a lie about me and it caused me damages. That's it. Okay, that's not the elements of defamation. I'm sure you know what they are. But the point is this. He hasn't even deposed Karen DeLucci or Scott Roberson, the two people that are alleged to have had something, that have alleged to say something. So if you think Joe Campbell's made some wonderful, stupendous, hard-nosed, provable allegations, in the 18 months since he's filed it, you think he would actually depose the people that he says lied about him. So if you think this is a legitimate lawsuit and that Joe found something secret, talk to one of the people that knows him. There's a guy that a lot of people up here talk to that is friends with him.
This brings me back to my previous question, and Councilmember Stewart made the point. I need to be clear when I vote on this. Is this about this case that we're now discussing, or is it a general policy in the future? That's the question that I am seeking an answer to.
Madam Mayor, I'll say it again. Yes and yes. Yes, it's about this case and any other case that comes forward.
Okay, thank you.
And just to respond, these people out here, they're paying the bill. And they have a right to ask questions.
Mr. They certainly do, and we have an obligation to keep those records, even if they are made available to the council confidential. So I'm not quite sure how, they are still closed records, so I'm not quite sure how that would work. But Mr. Cover, as long as we're discussing this, and you provide the council with regular updates on litigation, since our open session, regarding this case, can you provide any further updates on any actions that have taken place?
Well,
because those are a matter of public record, correct?
Sure. And again, to be clear, the city has retained Steve Coronado to represent the city in this case. So obviously, as the city councilor, I communicate with him, but I'm not indirectly involved with it. I don't, and I'm not a named attorney on it, so my updates come from him. The most substantive update would be that the Kansas City Star filed a motion to intervene in order to obtain a sealed deposition that the judge had sealed in this case. That would be the most current issue that has affected this case.
And that deposition was mine.
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I did want to make one point of clarification, Mr. Cover, and I'm glad you mentioned that order. If this measure passes, you still can't hand out the mayor's deposition because it's protected by a court order, correct?
Currently, the sealed order that's in place from the judge prohibits it from being disseminated beyond the parties and their attorneys.
Okay.
Okay? As the representatives of the city, the council members would be able to have that information. It's still not public information, but it would be available. Correct? Yes.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
No.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
I'm thinking, pass.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
No.
Mayor Weir?
Abstain.
DeLucy?
Abstain.
Item fails. Correct?
That
Oh,
passes.
passed? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
the item
I'm sorry.
passes.
Okay, item number 5.
22-710, a resolution adding the 97-acre former Rockwood Golf Course to the City of Independence Parks system and declaring the city council intent to move the solar panel park from the property.
Discussion? Hearing none?
Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Madam DeLucci, go ahead.
Yes, Councilmember DeLucci.
Madam Mayor, I've been around since 2017 when we bought Rockwood and $985,000 was spent of the IPL money. And we have a contract with MC Power over 30 years. And at the end of 30 years, if they want to continue for 5 years, it only costs them $1. And within that 30 years, we can't terminate that contract. After 7 years, which is 2025, MC Power can terminate the contract so long as it's paid up the way they want to be paid up. So then my question becomes, if we approve something in 2025, how much money are we paying for solar panels? How much are we paying for the lost income to MC Power? Where are we going to put the 31 acres of solar panels? Because it can't go in the ash ponds. Ash ponds are only 21 acres. We are making decisions without knowing anything about the money. In 2017, I knew the money, and I said no. That passed anyway. I'm telling everybody, don't say yes today, because it's going to be even worse than what we've done, because we don't know what we're talking about. I'm voting no.
Madam
Who's
Mayor?
next?
Madam Mayor. Well, I'm kind of glad we got this packet tonight, because again, this story came out without a resolution ever being put on an agenda, where we were told that if we do this, it'd be a massive financial impact and legal impact to the city, according to one council member. Didn't say how much, didn't say why, just in the story, he just said massive, and that's fine. I can take it. I understand our council's job. I don't think we're trying to have governance by surprise. I mean, that's all well and fine, but in this packet, I noticed that there was a community meeting for Rockwood Golf Course property, and it was led by a certain council member who first statement was, he began by informing, and I'm reading from the notes, the minutes, said, began by informing that the solar panels may be able to be moved as soon as 2025. Not my words. So, and that the city can buy them at market rate, move them elsewhere. And there was a discussion on if we move them, what would it be? This happened in August. So I don't think there's any shock. I don't think there's any surprise. I think this has been a topic of discussion with the community. And well, it should, by the way, since they have felt like this was a deal, again, made in the shadows. They didn't want it. They got it. Imagine having a home on a golf course one day and a solar farm. I didn't know we were raising solar panels, but a solar farm the next day. I've also discovered through one of my constituents who was wrangling, trying to get his solar array approved, that it didn't meet code because he was like 8 inches too tall. And when he sought the city for advice on the codes, he basically wasn't getting much of an answer. And then he proceeded to tell me that if you go out and look at the solar farm out in Rockwood, the solar arrays don't even meet city codes. So if we're going to hold our residents and our citizens to one standard, then by golly, why aren't we doing it for our own solar farms? So there's some questions that if we want to keep them, that we're going to have to get them up to code, since that's important to us. That is our city code. But to be shocked that this is now a discussion sounds a little disingenuous. It's been discussed. It's been talked about. And I think if we were being transparent, we know that the residents want us to do something with it. And I think there's more that can be done. Nobody's negotiating anything. We are trying to represent the serious concerns of residents out in that area who feel like that deal was birthed in the shadows. And we need to stop that.
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember DeLucci.
the resolution reads, the city commits to removing the solar panels by December 31, 2025. That is the 7 years where they can take it out, but if we terminate the solar panels prior to the 30 years, we have to come out with the solar panels, moving them. What is the operation of money going to MC Power? At this point, we pay MC Power $1.4 million a year. Each year, we make money from that solar stuff that reduces us by $600,000. So the money we lose is only $850,000 a year. Oh, okay, and we only have to pay that for 25 years? We cannot make this kind of decision not knowing anything. I don't even know how Parks would ever take care of 97 more acres. They are struggling to pay with what we have. Please think about this. We don't need to make this resolution today. Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, we've got a little confusion here, and some of these people are confused, including one of our fine newspaper things that put out, MC Power does not own the solar farm. MC Power built it and they maintain it. It is owned by someone else. So MC Power is out of this thing, and everybody keeps getting back. If I was him, I'd be launching a lawsuit up here, ruining his business. He has nothing to do with this. But I've dealt with a couple consultants that's kind of familiar with this, and it is feasible to move this in 2025. And the cost, you got 2024, you got right at 2025. You can change this. This is not like law. It could be changed, number one. But number two, my biggest concern, we keep hearing about how much this solar farm is costing us. Cost. Well, guess what? After a little bit of investigation, that we have never ever charged anyone for that solar farm. The additional on their contract has never been charged. People are not being billed for that solar farm. So we want to talk about money, and maybe we ought to look into that and see where all this billing is going to. Because it certainly isn't being taken from the people.
We charge people who agree on the solar panel for extra kilowatt hours. And that was the year I said, I'm not doing it. That's nuts. Why would I do that? But people are doing that.
Like I said, they're not being billed.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to.
Councilman Hobart?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to send this to the PUAB and to the Parks Department. I'd like to get there, let the PUAB get a take on this, and Parks as well.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'll vote first.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll on the motion.
Councilmembers Huff,
No.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
No.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
No.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Motion passes. Item number 6.
Madam Mayor, did we,
need to
did
read
we,
it first.
we didn't,
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. There was a motion to refer this to the POAB and the,
and that's what we just voted on,
and
correct?
staff, correct, which we voted on, that passed. So we don't need to read, the item, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
It's a motion to
Okay, go ahead.
move that item to the PUAB and Parks Rec and Tourism.
Madam Mayor, if I
We
might.
did, isn't that what we just voted on? No?
Right, and that finishes the business with the council for that item. It's now being moved to PUAB, Parks Rec and Tourism.
Mr. City Manager?
Could I clarify, does the council intend for that to go to city staff in the Parks Department or the Parks Commission?
Staff.
Okay.
Is that correct? Staff?
Yes.
I understood that to be staff.
Yes, my
Is that
apologies.
what? Okay. Councilman Perkins?
Thank you, Mayor. The reason why I voted for that is there's a huge aspect that let's just barely touched on. We can debate and argue about the solar panels and all of that, but the other massive debate here is, and we're talking about dollar and cents, and we're talking about council members doing their due diligence when you bring forth this information. Is Mr. Heidi here? Has Mr. Heidi even been brought, has this been brought to his discussion point to give feedback to Councilman Huff and Councilman Steinmeier of the immediate impact?
Director Heidi is appearing virtually tonight. Morris, I'll let you address that.
So, if I might, Councilman,
Sure.
we've voted on this item too. I think, just as a point of order, this item has been closed. We're bringing it, presumably it will come back at some point. I think those are valid questions. I have questions as well that we can address to the city manager and make sure those are included in the consideration by the staff and the PUAB.
Madam Mayor, just because it was asked, I just want to include that the other councilman who also gave the impression that this was doable, that we asked if Mr. Heidi had spoken with him as well. Thank you.
This item has been voted on, so let's move on to item number 6.
Bill number 22-711, a resolution encouraging the city manager to include funding in the fiscal year 2022-2023 submitted budget for the addition of a chief information security officer position.
Discussion on this item.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
so I had requested this because, as we all know, we had a security hack. I think it was last year at some point. They took down our network for, parts of our network for, several days, if not weeks. So a chief information security officer, or a CISO for short, is a position, I'm trying to pull my notes up here, is a position in an organization that's responsible that the organization maintains proper compliance with standards and security protocols and information technology and all other departments. In a mature security model, the CISO reports to the CEO and is usually not part of the IT department because they actually evaluate what they're doing as well. Just some of the responsibilities of one: they evaluate the IT threat landscape, they devise policy and controls to reduce risk, and they lead auditing and compliance initiatives. I think it'd be important for us to have this position. I realize that we do have somebody in tech services right now that performs some of these duties, but not all of them, as per a discussion with the city manager. So I would hope that the council would encourage us to create a position and have the city manager fill this. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Councilman Stewart, for that explanation, because I wasn't familiar with this. If this were not in tech services, if this were something that the council were going to consider approving in the budget, the creation of this position, where would you foresee that position being located? Who would it report to? I mean, if it is required to be outside of or preferable or best practices to have it outside of tech services so that there is that element of checks and balances, where would you foresee that position being?
Probably the most logical thing as I sit here tonight would be similar to the management analyst, which reports to the council as an independent position, or if the council's desire would for that to be somewhere embedded in the professional city staff, that would, if it weren't in tech services, which is part of finance administration, the only other natural fit I would see would be the city manager's office.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So originally in the resolution, I actually asked the city manager if it could be put in there that the position reported to him, and he recommended against that just because of the possible charter violation. So
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry. The original resolution, I had asked him if we could encourage that the position report to the city manager. And city manager recommended that I not do that just because the possibility of a charter violation and us to not be involved in personnel issues. So that's all I have on that. But that was my original intention of the ordinance.
So if I understand this correctly, this resolution would be directing the city manager to investigate if this would be a appropriate position, a fundable position, a recruitable position, all of those elements. This would not direct this position to be created. It would direct us to encourage looking into this prior to the submission of the budget for the next fiscal year.
Yes, that's my intent.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff.
Yes.
Councilmembers Huff.
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
Yes.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
No.
Mayor Ware?
Yes. Item number 6 passes. We'll move on to our ordinances for this evening.
Bill number 22-001, an ordinance authorizing final disposition of certain city records that have met all requirements to be eligible for such disposition. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
DeLucy?
Yes.
Steinmeier?
Yes.
Hobart?
Yes.
Mayor Ware?
Yes. Ordinance passes.
Bill number 22-004, an ordinance declaring the need to acquire real property for the amelioration of conditions which constitute blight in the city by negotiation or, if necessary, by condemnation, and authorizing the city manager to obtain and execute all instruments necessary for acquisition of such land. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to explain my vote. I originally voted in favor of this, and I'm not voting in favor of this. I'm voting against this. I originally said that I was only saying yes because I knew that we'd still vote on eminent domain. What's in front of us today is not coming back to us. And I simply want the owner to be safe, healthy, and proper. And I looked at the records. They responded to us 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. They didn't respond in 20 or 21, and it cost us a little over $8,000 to fix Kmart. I believe a registered letter saying, we are not going to do this again. We will, in fact, do eminent domain. Here's our paper. Call us, is more appropriate than us deciding, well, we'd rather use somebody else. And therefore, I am voting no.
Mr. City Manager, I just want to be clear on the action that has been taken. Has that step occurred?
Not certified mail to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I also just want to give a different side of this too. I don't want our city to have a reputation of not protecting private property rights, and I just do not see how that is healthy for a city that needs to grow its economy. We need capital investment, but if we have someone that sets its sight on your property, whether it's your business property or your private property, your personal property, your residential property, and they have access to elected officials, all we gotta do is just come and say, I want that property. We're no longer representing all of Independence. We are representing the interest of some of Independence, and that's a concern. And I think that that's the last thing we need as a reputation as a city, and this can actually damage our economy if we get into the business of taking or seizing private property. Just some food for thought. There's some benefits to it, and it may sound reasonable, but it's not responsible, and we need to be very careful with that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, is this the same process that we used when we started the procedures here in Inglewood with the three-story, the comprehensive mental health building?
That's correct. We had a property owner that wasn't responsive and/or caring for the property, so we initiated those proceedings in the window of time where it is required for us to make a good faith effort to negotiate. That is when the property owner indicated that they intended to sell the property. That is when we got the required appraisal performed, and that was the agreed upon amount that the transaction completed on. I did want to clarify, just for the council's benefit, that there are several steps. While tonight's action is the action that would initiate, if approved, that initial 60-day window, there are several steps in which both the circuit court and a court-appointed board of commissioners will have to determine if this property meets the statutory requirements of blight and/or moving forward. And as we've seen tonight, there's ample ability for the council to interject and cease this process if they would want to via resolution giving staff direction to end that action.
Madam Mayor.
For that, if I may continue.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that. So, in short, we've done this before. We've developed Inglewood into what it is now and moving that forward, and that all started with this type of discussion and action. So to answer some questions, we have done this before, and it's worked out perfectly.
Yes.
My apologies, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Cover, have you done, or are you familiar with the eminent domain proceedings?
Yes, I'm familiar with the eminent domain proceedings.
Could you explain for everybody what that looks like?
Sure. So generally speaking, this ordinance, if it were to be approved, would initiate the proceedings, which would allow us to make essentially formal communications with the property owner, or at least attempt to. It starts a 60-day window of good faith negotiations where essentially they want you to, the state, in setting out this process, wants you to try to have a negotiation, and it has to, that's a 60-day window set by statute. So after, if there was no resolution within that 60-day window, then that would mean that we would move forward in the process. There would have to be a blight study done. There would have to be the appointment of commissioners. There would have to be a circuit court case filed. I mean, there's a number of steps outlined in the statutes to take you through this process. As Mr. City Manager pointed out, fundamentally, at any point in time that the council changed their mind up until the actual condemnation has been approved, the council, can do that. There would also, potentially be any sort of, if there's any sort of approval of funds being spent or anything like that, that would have to, also come before the council. So there's a number of other opportunities, but this is required by statute to initiate the process.
Let me ask you one follow-up. So how long estimated would that process be if we started tomorrow with our 60 days and sent whatever we had to send? Then how long of a process would the property owner have to engage and?
Well, it's 60 days to initially on that window. Then there's a number of different benchmarks and timelines that dictate when the steps happen after that. So if this were to approve and this would start tomorrow, my best guess be it would probably be late July or August before it would be able to go through all the steps.
Councilmember Hobart, when staff first put together a memo outlining the eminent domain checklist and timeline, we had indicated that would start back on December 6th with the creating the ordinance and bringing that to council for consideration. Had that started on December 6th, that would have been completed, estimated timeline, assuming everything went perfectly, the timeline would have been May 24th of this year, just to give you a general sense of how long it takes for that to play. About a 5-month, 6-month period.
And if this, to either one of you gentlemen, if this process was completed, we filed suit and we won and we're at the end of the day, do we take the property or does the property owner get paid? Who ends up with what?
Well, sure, you can't, it's illegal to just take the property without paying for it. So that's what this does, is if gone through fruition, this forces a sale of the property at the fair market value, which is determined by the commissioners that are appointed. And there's a statutory process for how those commissioners get appointed. But it forces a sale of the property. It doesn't take the property without just compensation.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Yes.
I still can't, I'm appalled that anyone on this council really thinks that this is a proper way to do business. Because I don't answer my phone, or I don't want to sell my property, that you jam me up politically and take my property or fair market value. Maybe I want twice what fair market value is. Why do we think that we can honestly do this? I couldn't sleep at night if I did this to a person.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So I'll just stand by my previous comments that I believe this violates the Missouri Constitution. Another thing, I contacted Jackson County earlier today because I was inquiring about, because they are behind on their property taxes by I think 3 years, and I was calling to find out when this would be available to be sold on the courthouse steps if somebody wanted to buy it. And the first response I got, well, after 3 years, it would be August that they would sell it on the courthouse steps. And then they got a pause, and they're like, actually, that property's in bankruptcy. So I don't even know how we would start to untangle that web. You know, who even owns the property? So anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
No.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
No.
DeLucy,
No.
Steinmeier,
No.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
No. Ordinance fails. Madam City Clerk.
Bill number 22-005, an ordinance vacating existing platted sanitary sewer easement of all that part of Eastland Center, first plat on and across outlet 2 of the platted 40-foot wide utility easement and containing 3,016.79 square feet, more or less, a subdivision at Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
Yes. Ordinance passes. First reading.
Bill number 22-006, an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Article 16, Carnival and Circus Amusement Rides and Devices of the Independence City Code.
Okay, that concludes our agenda for this evening. I would draw your attention to the COVID-19 semi-monthly update. We all know, I think, that the COVID surge is very serious. There's a very severe lack of testing. There are testing events happening around the community. They do need an appointment, and they're going very quickly. Council member comments. I'll start on my left with Councilmember Hobart.
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilman Steinmeier.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that it's been a tough day today, just things that have happened, but, I'm sorry that these things come to light in election year. It certainly triggers comments that this is just a political fight, and I just want you to know it's not. It's a fight for honest representation of citizens' interest, an end to special interest deals that have robbed this city of critical funding resources and that we need in this area so much. If a political fight is what everyone wants this to be called, that's fine. But the real call is for honest representation of the hardworking citizens and business owners of this city. And if you want to make Independence better, it starts with all of us sitting here looking at public trust. And my hope is that we will work diligently to rebuild the trust of this city.
Councilmember DeLucci.
I just want to reiterate how good the Staywell Committee is, how hard they work, how well they work, and I don't know what it's going to cost. I do suggest the committee look at their finances, and if there's a problem, let us know. Thank you.
Councilman Huff.
I have nothing this evening.
Councilmember Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of weeks ago, I had the good pleasure of going to a fundraiser for Care Beyond the Boulevard. It's a great organization that services the whole Kansas City metro area and also touches independence. What they do is they provide street-level care, medical care for our houseless individuals, those who are in more need. So it was a great fundraiser. They have a whole bus that's turned into a facility for medical use. They're run by nurse practitioners and doctors. Great organization. They are here. They work in our city, so I was proud to support them. Two, Mr. City Manager, staff, I want to say thanks to getting out there and trying to do the best you can with all the snow and with the short of help that we have at times because of quarantines and COVID-19 and some of the other things that affect our crews. And also want to say thanks to those water folks and everybody else that I'm going to miss, but they're out there working their butts off with getting ready to have this cold snap that's coming down the line. Our first responders and power and light guys and our water and sewer guys that have to get out there and fix those lines and do all of that. So big kudos and thanks to them.
Thank you.
Councilman Stewart.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank the Community of Concerned Citizens, our Martin Luther King Coalition, and our Human Relations Commission for hosting the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration last evening at the Truman Memorial Building. An outstanding speaker, and it's always a joy to hear from the students who perform at the event and share their essays in the annual essay contest that's sponsored by John Oliveras. So just wanted to publicly thank Lupe, who was here earlier as part of that group. And it was an outstanding tribute to Martin Luther King and its 35th year of having that celebration in independence. Mr. City Manager, anything else this evening?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
We are adjourned.